Nutrient cycles. Energy flows in one direction, so from the sun to the producers to the consumers, but most of that energy is lost as heat, and so it dissipates or spreads out to the environment. And energy is never created or destroyed, but it does spread out and become useless. Nutrients, however, are different. They cycle, and so the carbon that's in you could have been in a dinosaur once upon a time and will very likely be in some other organism someday. So, for example, here are producers, and they're taking in let's say carbon dioxide from the air. That carbon dioxide is going into the herbivore, and then it's transferred to the carnivore. And then when the plants or the animals die, they get broken down by decomposers. The carbon dioxide goes back into the air and is taken back in by plants, and so on and so on and so on. And so all nutrients cycle: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, all that stuff, whereas energy flows. So we're going to look at the first cycle of matter today. We're going to look at the carbon cycle. So essentially all of the atoms on Earth will stay the same for the life of our planet, except for radioactive stuff, but they can be recycled and combined in different ways with other atoms. So we're going to look at 3 different cycles. We'll look at the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and the carbon cycle. And in this video, we'll talk about the carbon cycle. So here's a very simple version of the carbon cycle. So when plants do photosynthesis, they take in CO2. So if you remember the equation, it's carbon dioxide plus water, and they need light energy. Whoops. And they put that stuff together and they make glucose, C6H12O6. And of course you need some sixes here. And then you also make oxygen. And so when plants do photosynthesis, they take in that carbon dioxide, it's a reactant, and they build their bodies with it. When plants do cellular respiration to break down their glucose, they do the opposite. So the products here will be the reactants here. So here's cellular respiration, you have glucose plus oxygen, and you'll actually end up needing 6 of those. And then you'll break that down to CO2 and water and a different chemical energy source, ATP. So it's just a different form of chemical energy. And here are the 6s that go with that. So if you look at carbon dioxide, it's released from cellular respiration, but it's used in photosynthesis. So that's the basis of the carbon cycle. Also, you could burn plants, that's combustion, and you release the carbon dioxide just the same. It's just that you wouldn't make ATP if you did combustion. Here it gets a little bit more complicated because there are animals around, and so the animals can eat the plants. So in this case, the carbon that came from the air that went into the plants is eaten by animals. And then when animals do cellular respiration, they release it as carbon dioxide gas. Of course, animals and plants can both die, and the decomposers will take in that carbon, and then they'll do cellular respiration, and they'll release carbon dioxide gas. And then it gets a little bit more confusing even because the carbon that's in plants and animals can be pressurized for a million years and made into fossil fuels like oil and natural gas and coal. And when you burn those, there's the combustion again, you release the carbon dioxide gas. So here's a picture. I think this is the one that's in your notes. So here's a plant doing photosynthesis. So this one's taking in carbon dioxide, and then either it dies and the detrivores, the decomposers, break down the carbon dioxide or release the organic carbon into carbon dioxide when they do cellular respiration, or an animal can eat the plant and an animal can eat the animal, and these animals or plants can die and the detrivores will do cellular respiration and release CO2, or these organisms or the plants can do cellular respiration and release the carbon into the environment. This one is also showing you that you can burn either wood or you can burn fossil fuels that I just talked about and you release CO2. So this is the part, this fossil fuel part is the part that we're doing a lot more of today. And so we're putting a lot more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than we used to be. And so this is a problem because if you look at the planet, that's our planet Earth. And I think I need a new color for this one. Let's use red. So if you look at the, whoops, if you look at the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Here's the atmosphere. It's actually a very, very thin layer around the Earth, held in by the gravity from the Earth. And if you have sunshine, yellow, if you have sunshine over here and it's shining down, trying to get rid of that. Anyway, if that's shining in, the carbon dioxide will absorb some of the light and it'll change it into heat. And so that will keep our planet warm, and that's a really, really good thing. But if you have way too much CO2, then it will it'll trap too much sunlight as heat, and so it'll heat up the planet too much. So that's a problem. It's very much like going into your car on a sunny day. And here's your car. And so the sun shines in, and of course it comes into the car and it bounces around and it's absorbed. And when it's released as heat. And so the heat can't get out like the sun could get in. And so it's trapped there. So you might notice sometimes leaving your car and it feels fine, coming back a couple hours later if it's been in the sun and having the car very, very hot at that point. So that works very, very much like our atmosphere, because the atmosphere can trap heat in a very similar way. So that's called global warming. Another thing that can happen is when carbon dioxide combines with water. So you have H2O plus carbon dioxide when they're together, and it makes H2CO3, carbonic acid. There's the H2C, and then there's O3. And that breaks down to hydrogen ion and the bicarbonate ion, which would be if you took out an H, you'd have an HCO3 minus left over. And so a lot of the carbon dioxide is stored that way. And so having too much carbon in the ocean is also an issue. And so it can acidify the ocean because you're releasing all those hydrogen ions. So that's a problem too. And I think that's it for the carbon cycle. Yep, so we'll continue the water cycle in the next video.